He says, I believe it would be great and appropriate for the time of year when many of us are in the off season or base season to do a longer discussion on the concept below. You guys have touched on it from many, many sides in previous podcasts, but I don't remember you truly committing to it and spelling it out for listeners crystal clear. The topic is simple. You will become a better rider if you cultivate many different skills. And you've stated that before. So, and actually, Amber, you've mentioned this that recently and how you've been working on mountain biking, and you went from swimming to cycling. And Nate, you talk about the skill development that you've always had. Chad, we have talked about this. He says, the problem I see is that although this sounds good in theory, I personally shied away from that because of a simple fact. Mastering a skill is difficult, and it seems and sometimes is out of grasp. So how can I ever carve a rad turn on the mountain bike like Jonathan, descend on the road bike like Amber, strength train like Chad, nail volume like Nate, have Pete's racecraft, and on it goes. The task is to Nate's face right now, if you could only see or hear
nail
it.
Volume? Have you paid attention? I can, what I'm pretty good, I'm like a domestic pro at reaching the top shelf in the kitchen. Like that's pretty good. But other than that, I'm not, I don't do any of it well. Sorry. Okay, continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
You are consistent though. And except for when you do, so
too much volume.
I know that. Yes, that's what I was going to say. Too much volume.
The thing he says I do well, except when I do that bad.
Yeah, exactly. He says the task is too formidable on each point, and so I don't start any of them. Ooh, this is like that's a really good point. So, a lot of us probably do that. So this is where we'll kind of drop off. He says, the point I see meriting to be stressed is this one. You don't need to cultivate Instagram worthy skills to get better, and you can get a base level of competency in these areas that will benefit your cycling greatly. He says, in fact, if you try, and this is perhaps the first discussion point here, he says, in fact, if you try to be competent in as many areas as possible and excel in just a few, you'll be the best rider you can be given your time constraints. Okay, so I just want to have like a larger discussion on this whole point of developing skills, being intimidated by mastery of a skill, or how to achieve that and how to go about the whole thing. Nate, it's interesting. Like, I want to start with you on this just because you were mentioning like business people, right? So somebody that goes from water to diapers to clothes to all these things. I'm sure you've come across people that just seem like they have everything in terms of like tens across the board on skill sets or something like that. Like they're very skilled.
No, I know, but I've seen behind the curtains. It's not. It's just this is great. So what it is, so I hang out with a whole bunch of business people through Entrepreneurs Organization, and there are a few like I call geniuses, but they're very few and far between. Like 1 out of 500 will be that way, and I'm just like, wow, this person is amazingly smart. Everyone else, at least they present to everyone else. Like I have this too, unearned confidence. We're just like, we can do it. There's like, no, why not? Like, let's just go do it. And then the other part of that, a lot of times these people even have imposter syndrome. That's also, I would say probably 70% of the people that you see have imposter syndrome, which means they feel like they don't belong, but everyone else feels like they don't belong too. And it's very funny, right? And what they just do is they don't care. They're not super scared about failing or super scared about people seeing them do bad things, like getting judged by other people. And that's so key in probably everything in life, right? I share on this. I'm horrible at tons of things. I don't really care if people know about it because it's like a learning opportunity. And if you have that growth mindset, you can be successful in business or cycling. But if you're scared that like, you know what, I'm never going to be great. This is too hard. And that's another thing too, is when you start these things, you get all excited about any kind of skill or business. And then you get a little bit in, you're like, ooh, this is kind of hard. And then you get in this part where like, wow, this is going to take so much time and effort, right? This is kind of like, this happens with cyclists. You start and you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. Then you ride with some people, this is hard. Then you ride with really fast people and you're like, I'm never, ever, ever going to get there. But if you can get past it and start getting those habits in and that learning and growth, you can come to the other side where you're like, hey, this isn't so bad anymore. I remember like 3 hours a week used to be insanely hard for me to do. Like I dread getting on the bike. And now I'm like, it's fun every time, right? And I know what I'm doing and I can see the path to the future and I can understand what I'm doing, how that impacts the future.
Yeah,
I didn't really answer your question, but that's something I want to talk about.
Yeah, and let's pivot to Amber on this because Amber, you went from swimming to cycling. And we've talked about the fact that, yes, you did start out in lower categories and worked your way up, but that was very quick. Like, relatively speaking, you ended up amongst pros very quickly. Were you intimidated by that? Like, did you paint in your mind that everybody else were pro riders and you were just fresh and new and uniquely disadvantaged, or perhaps that they were uniquely advantaged?
I wouldn't say I was intimidated. And actually, in my case, and this is maybe a little bit unique because I happened to be physically in a geographic location where there were some really high level cyclists all around me who were also very approachable, kind people who were very eager to help share lessons and help me learn, which was really great. So I think that made the whole process feel more approachable. And it was so fun because I think as you start, the gains that you make on any skill are huge. And then what happens is the longer you hone a particular craft or a particular skill, the smaller those gains become. Mm-hmm. And that can be kind of hard. So it's actually kind of fun in the beginning, I think, because you do make so much progress so quickly. And then I think there's kind of this pattern, which I certainly saw with cycling, where in the beginning I was improving really quickly. I was on this really steep learning curve and it was awesome. And then you feel like you're having some success and that really helps feed the motivation, feed the confidence. And then I went to Europe and it was like, oh, so this is the deep end. And at first that was really intimidating because it was kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Like I am really going to I have a long way to go. I have a much longer way to go than I thought I did. And at first that was intimidating, but eventually that became a source of comfort because what I then realized was this never ends in a good way, because I'm never going to cross some invisible finish line where like, that's it. You have learned the skills. Congratulations. Like, no, I can actually get better at any one of these things forever. I really can. I can always learn something about how I can become better. And what I found was, yes, it's fun to be good at something, but it's even more fun to be in the process of becoming better. And that process never has to end. And that's pretty cool. And I think that that's a hard thing to wrap your head around in the very beginning. But as you go through that process and you gain perspective, that actually becomes something kind of cool because it's like, wow, let's just imagine all of the things that I don't know yet. And it's so exciting because it's all of the stuff that's there for you yet to explore.
John, you know Richie Rude, who I say is totally world-class, right, for skills on the bike, for mountain biking. You might not know this, but I wonder if he ever has a run and goes, wow, I suck. Like,
he does.
I didn't do a good, right? And then looks at it, analyzes it, and tries to improve an extra % or two on time the whole time. He doesn't just say, I'm good for Instagram now, let's go do it. And it just coasts and goes, check mark, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. He actually, and he's mentioned that this year he had trouble getting the results that he wanted to get. And he was super analytical about how he broke it down. And now he has learnings and a new challenge and something to work on. And so it's never that, like, I do believe that mastery is misunderstood in the sense that a lot of people assume that it's a spot where you've achieved a certain level and then not that you rest on your laurels, but improvement just doesn't happen. However, if anything, actually improvement is probably happening faster or more often at that level, because to get to a point of mastery, whatever you deem that is, that requires a person to really adopt actively a growth mindset and constantly they're in the habit of finding ways to improve all the time, right? Whereas an athlete that really isn't there, they're not doing that sort of thing. And something that I want to discuss here too is that he mentioned that an athlete that has or that you'd be a better athlete if you tried to just focus on a bunch of different things. And I guess that's probably depends on the discipline, right? Because for time trialing, it does not matter how good your bunny hop is, no matter what, right? That just doesn't matter. But Chad, this jack of all trades sort of a thing, it actually doesn't pan out quite as often as we think, right?
Yeah. And I come up against this personally, and I see people come up against it because it's a tempting, alluring thing to be good at so many things. But the fact is, if you chase too many things, you're never going to be very good at any one of those things. So that's that whole jack of all trades, master of none sort of ideology. And I think it works well in the context of just being a good human being, just being capable in many respects. And I won't say it's easy to achieve, but that's not hard to achieve relative to becoming really good in a lot of athletic realms. Because at some point you have to You have to get specific. You have to say, even though I want to be good at 10 things, I'm going to pick the 5 things that are most relevant to that one thing that I really want to be good at, or those 2 things that overlap closely enough that I can chase both of them. But at some point, you've got to whittle it down. Otherwise, and this is going to sound like I'm harping on CrossFitters, but actually Nate is the one who brought this up, and he said it a number of times, and I've agreed with him every time. Is that CrossFitters claim that they're the fittest athletes in the world. And I hate it. It gets under my skin every time I hear it, because they're not. They're the fittest CrossFitters in the world. They're good at a wide array of things, and that's true, but they're not the fittest athletes in the world. I mean, you take the best CrossFitter, I think a couple of years ago in the CrossFit Games, and this is the peak of the peak, right? They had a criterium, and they put these muscle-bound, very capable human beings in a lot of realms on bicycles and had them race around. And this is a foreign experience for them, so I cut them a heck of a lot of slack, but even the best amongst them probably couldn't hold his or her own in a Cat 3 criterium. They're just not going to, and that's far from the high end of things. I mean, there's so many steps above Cat 3. Well, go ahead.
Think about them racing a marathon against Kipchoge, right?
Just
on the fittest in the world.
But actually racing a marathon, just getting under 3 hours when you're carting around an extra 30 pounds of lean mass. I mean, that lean mass is super useful in a lot of contexts. But when it comes to, we're endurance athletes, so we think in endurance athlete terms. You're never going to be a good endurance athlete if you have 10, 20, 30 extra pounds of muscle mass dragging you down.
They're good at a lot of things.
A lot. It's impressive.
And
it's always impressive.
Better than the normal person at a lot of things, but not as good as a specialist in anything. There's no thing where like someone specializes in, let's say, weightlifting, and they're going to clean more than someone who goes to the Olympics and cleans, right? Like it's just not going to happen. But this is one thing you said, Chad, about having to specialize. I think it all depends on your goals, because you can be like, you just want to ride with your friends for fun. I want to mountain bike some. I'm going to do some cross. And you could even race, right? And I'm going to do some gravel rides, and then I'm going to try a triathlon. And you can be pretty good at all of that, but it's without specialization, it's extremely hard to win a national championship unless you have, like a crazy VO2 max. And there are people that do that can just like hop between sports, and their fitness makes up for their skill.
And that's true too. But if you take somebody who's Cat 4 fit and they want to progress to Cat 3, they're going to have to get a little more specific. And then if they want to make the broader leap to Cat 1, 2, they're going to have to get more specific in all the things they pursue. So without becoming a total specialist and not pursuing domestic professionalism or, world tour ranks, they're going to have to get more and more specific. And typically this process handles itself, right? You start doing things and you get good at one thing, and then you recognize the things that are necessary to support that, to prop it up. And it happens on its own. And before you know it, you've kind of shed those superfluous things that you didn't really need anyway. Even though you'd like to be good at them, they're not necessary to be good at the things you enjoy doing most.
This is why, forgive me, this is why athletes like Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Mathieu van der Poel, Wout van Aert, like these athletes are so impressive because they're able to perform at the top level. And I know it's all cycling, but they are very unique disciplines. And I think it even shows, like with Mathieu van der Poel with cross-country mountain biking. I know that we still feel like he just showed up and dominated, but if you look back, there were 2 seasons of bumping his head against the wall, really trying to figure it out and why he was not performing at the level he should have. It wasn't because he wasn't fast. It wasn't because he wasn't fit. He was, but he had to really learn that next level of execution. And we've actually talked about this with Get Ready to Drink with Keegan a few times, where he's talked about the World Cups. And we know that he can execute and get a really good, like by the numbers, he should be able to finish really well in a World Cup, but he's just figuring it out. Like there's this other level when you enter with the world's most elite that's really complex. And it's tough to figure out. So that's why it's so impressive to see an athlete like Pauline that's just able to excel at so many different disciplines. But with all that said, it's really tempting to make that or their expertise or the expertise of somebody else and how much work it took to get there to act as a big discouragement to us. Like basically to say, well, then why should I even try? Because I'll never get to that level. And it's that whole thing of letting good be the enemy of great. Like you basically get to a point where you're like, well, if I can't be perfect, I'm just not even going to try. And it's exactly, and it happens all the time, right, Nate? Like
all the time, everyone, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very
Amber, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you bring up a couple of really good points with that. So looking at riders like Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, one of the things I think that makes that type of breadth possible is a lot of times when you work on one skill, it will relate to other skills, right? So as an example, if you get really, really good at cornering your bike, you will not only be better in a criterium, but you will also be better at descending, because going downhill, the only thing that's really tricky about going downhill is going around corners downhill, right? Like if you're just going straight, it's not really that big of a deal. So working on the cornering skill actually translates to a lot of different related skills, right?
Nate's smiling once again.
You're just saying these things that aren't true. Like going downhill, a straight line at 60 miles per hour is insanely scary. And I'd rather go 30 miles per hour on tight corners. Like, ugh. But that's just me. So there's an example. You can suck at everything, people, and it's okay. It's about enjoying the process of improving, right? Like if you enjoy the process of improving, you can be successful in it. You're never no one masters anything. Like the best chess player in the world is still like, oh, I'm so bad, right? Don't worry about it. Just improve, and don't worry about, especially it's an Instagram image. Well, don't look at that at all.
Yeah.
That is also the worst.
Don't try to emulate that level of what you see. People are putting out the absolute best from the best angle, from the best circumstances at all times. You're looking at something that is not representative of real life. You know, and so when we hold ourselves to that standard, we really do ourselves a disservice. Sorry, Amber, we interrupted.
No, not at all. Yeah, I agree. When you're looking at Instagram, nobody's behind the scenes can compare to someone else's highlight reel. Ever. It's just not possible. But one of the things I wanted to bring up too is that in addition to my previous point, hang on a second, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry,
okay, I'll say something. Google Instagram versus reality. I don't know if it's a Instagram feed, but I know it's on Reddit, and it shows like the beautiful people on Instagram, and then there's pictures or videos of them when they're not like completely edited, and they do not look. It's not the same person, and it's one of those things where the Instagram life is a lie, right?
Yeah,
it's not
totally.
It's not true.
Yeah,
I remembered what I was going to say. Sorry.
Cool.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Please, no, go.
Okay. One of the things I want to point out is when it comes to bike handling skills in particular, you do not have to achieve mastery to be a good bike handler, right? So I want to just put that out there as well. It's not like you don't have to have Instagram worthy skills in order to handle a bike well, in order to race, in order to do these things. So it's just about jumping on that learning curve and engaging with it. Because if you learn how to corner well, if you feel more confident on your bike, those skills, you can always build those skills more. But every time you improve those, you're going to improve your confidence, and all of that is going to help. So don't feel like you have to achieve mastery in order to do anything really. It's just about getting on that learning curve wherever you are, engaging with it, and starting to move along it.
Yeah, and then there's the other. Oh, sorry,
Go
Nate,
ahead.
please.
I want to talk about you, John. John,
Yeah.
you are so John's a great example of this. His goal is a U.S. National Cross Country Mountain Bike Championship, and John has extremely high mountain bike skills, but he's not as good as Keegan. He's not as good as Richie Rude. But looking at his goal and the kind of courses for cross country, we've talked about it. John could probably get as good as Keegan or Richie and not take many seconds off at all. Keegan, Amber. She's drinking every time I say it.
I'm running out of coffee.
You're not going to be able to, it's not coffee,
another
Chad,
cup of
we
tea.
know it.
That's bourbon.
But John, like you might take maybe a couple seconds off because the course, your descending skills aren't limited by the terrain. But what John does need to specialize in more is he needs to get his power to weight ratio up even higher. And that's the thing where you probably have the most room, the least amount, or the most, for the time in, you can improve the most. For you to increase your skills that much to get to like a Richie Rude level, you'd have to do some crazy, crazy training.
And it would come with a lot of risk that I'm not willing to tolerate either, you know?
Exactly. So just like you don't have to be a master too to even perform at a very high level, which is what Amber is saying. I don't need to take a turn at 60 miles per hour on my road bike in order to do well in a crit. I need to take them at like 25, maybe sometimes 30. And then I'm fine. Like, right. I'll be okay in a crit.
And it's also, there's a danger with this too, is that sometimes we tend to like almost like vilify mastery or set it as something that's just like, well, it'll never be achieved. So I'm just absolutely not concerned with it. But really, instead, what we should do is if we're going to point at something and say something's bad, it should be our unrealistic goal settings as it relates to that, rather than, mastering the skill itself. So like a good example of this, maybe this will make a bit more sense, but cyclocross racers and hopping barriers. Some cyclocross racers refuse to do it, and they start to hate barriers, and they start to hate the concept of bunny hopping over barriers. And whenever somebody brings it up, they're like, yeah, well, you can run faster. You know what I mean? Like you can get through it. It's not always the fastest. And really what happens is the skill, because it isn't attainable, and because we've probably set some sort of unrealistic expectations that we should just be able to do it without working at it. Or why do I have problems with it if it seems like nobody else has problems with it? Once again, not understanding all the work that goes in behind the scenes. But many times we begin to almost like hate the skill or hate the level of accomplishment of the skill in and of itself. Now, if it has nothing to do with what your performance is going to need on race day, like what's required of you, then yeah, it doesn't matter. But if it is within there and it's something that you can at least get better at, you don't have to be perfect at it, but get better at it. It's really important to be realistic with yourself, find a good way that you can measure your improvement and step through that sort of, progression that you can have with those sort of skills. It can be demotivating, but I've found that anytime I'm demotivated, it's because I have unrealistic expectations for myself. And then I don't have a clear path forward on how to make progress with it. And if I would let go of fear, and if I would just be okay with not being great at things right off the top, then I would actually be a much better athlete and probably much better person in general. We actually talk about this a lot. Nate, maybe you can explain this a little bit, but we talk about like bullets and cannonballs. And many times, and also that iterative improvement, right, Nate, that it's better to constantly be working and out, or having something that you're doing and outputting, rather than just hoping that this one big thing is going to be your success. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So Bullets and Cannonballs is from, I think, Good to Great. It's Jim Collins, or it's Built to Last. I forget. But the idea is when companies go and do something, the best companies, they don't just say, hey, we're going to go after this strategy and throw all their money at it. They and shoot a cannonball. At first, they sight in with bullet to say like, ooh, do I want this? Or is this the right thing? Oh, nope, we'll test it. That wasn't it. Let's move over a little bit. Let's do that. And then once they are on target, then they shoot a cannonball. So for us, that was the podcast, for example. We started we wasn't perfect. It wasn't like this production quality. We didn't have these good of mics. We didn't spend as much time on it, and we got it going. And then once we're like, hey, we're on target. And then we started spending more money on it. We had John this is like podcasting be his only job. We did planning meetings. We spend so much more time on it. We've got all these fancy mics and cameras and all that sort of stuff is throwing that cannonball. We go travel around, right, and do races and talk to people. That's an example. I'm not sure how that relates to cycling exactly, but
I think it's, and another good point with that too, is that we still put out a podcast every week along that projection or along that path, right?
Yep.
We didn't stop and wait until we were certain that we were good enough, and then we went for it. So for cycling, it's when you're talking about working on, I'm just going to use barriers and bunny hopping. Like, don't just assume that you'll get there once you just start to finish in the top 3 of whatever category you're in, that you'll just magically start to bunny hop barriers. And don't wait to get good at it before you start trying it, because you'll never get good at it. Instead, every day, just fire a little bullet, figure it out, start to get to the point where you actually say, oh, okay, this is how I can improve at this. And then at that point, iterate, do it over and over and over and over again.
There's that saying like practice makes perfect, but it's perfect practice. I hate that too. No one's doing perfect practice. Blah.
No.
Just try to constantly improve. So when you do something, say, hey, could I get better at this? Yeah, what should I do? And if you're always trying to look at how you can improve, that's the good kind of practice. That's all you have to do. Don't do perfect practice. You'll never start.
Well, that's a good point, though. Perfection is not on the table. And I don't think in a lot of cases mastery is either. I mean, You talk about firing cannonballs at the podcast here, maybe implying that we've achieved some level of mastery. We far from have. We're still working toward it. We're still chasing it because we're still invested in the process and we're enjoying ourselves along the way. But we have a lot of room to improve. With that said, we're pretty good at it by now. So we've gotten really good at this, and we focus on a lot of other things in a day, not just the podcast. Yeah,
we've gotten good at it by being bad at it and being okay with being bad at it, but getting better every day, right? Like that's the point. And this is interesting though, because the way that we look at the podcast, I listen to every podcast after we record it. I take notes on different things that we can improve on. And then after that, the next week when we have a planning meeting, we'll cover some of those things. We are constantly trying to improve, right? And I didn't have as much attention to those sort of details and room for improvement when we just started, where we are now. Like, it's changed and it's evolved. And you actually had a story about this, Amber, where the athletes, like these gymnasts that I believe were high school to collegiate level. Can you share that experience? Because I think this is super insightful.
Yeah. So this was a gymnastics coach that was sharing this, and I don't remember where I read it, but it was the coach was just sharing the story, and he was coaching collegiate freshman gymnasts who were obviously very successful in high school, had been recruited, they were at an NC2A Division I school, and the athletes were really frustrated, and they kept venting to their coach that they were not nearly as good now in college as they had been in high school. And the coach thought that was really strange because, generally speaking, you know, you get better the more you do it. But they were so insistent that they were worse in college than they had been in high school that he actually thought, well, maybe there's something to this. So he went back and he looked at tapes of them performing in high school, and it was so clear that they were worlds better in college than they had been in high school. And he realized what was actually happening. It wasn't that they were worse than they used to be. It was they had gotten so much better that their awareness of mistakes was so much better than it had ever been, right? So when you're learning how to do something, at first you're not even aware of your mistakes. And this is that kind of unconscious incompetence moving towards conscious incompetence, towards conscious competence, and then ultimately towards unconscious competence. But this is exactly what was happening is as they got better, their awareness of what they were doing went from seeing the mistakes after the fact to actually being aware of and detecting mistakes in real time. And all of that shifted their perception and made them think that they were actually not as good as they used to be when they weren't aware of their mistakes. And that's a really interesting process that a lot of us probably go through as you're learning a new skills. You get to a point where you're so much more aware of your mistakes than you ever were before, and that can feel discouraging, but it's actually a sign of really, really important progress.
Yeah, then we've all been there too, where like you feel like, oh man, did you see that sprint? How great it was! And then we see a video of ourselves, and we're like, oh wow, never mind. Meanwhile, and not to imply that Pete is a master sprinter, like, you know, they're athletes that are, of course, very, very good at sprinting that Pete wouldn't be able to compete with. But Pete's look at sprinting is different than mine. He's much more analytical. He's always looking for like a way to improve. Whereas I'm just looking at my head unit to see the numbers go up. Right. So, so it is like a really good point. The more experience you get in the process of improving a skill, the more aware you will be of your shortcomings. That's just how it goes. So, and but all of this to say, kind of like circling back on this, that you're not supposed to be good at everything, and you're not supposed to be perfect at any one thing. But this whole process that we talk about constantly with training, with planning, training, and analyzing, rinse, repeat, as you improve, as you get faster, everything else in whichever area you're focusing on, it's just about being better than yesterday. That's it. Like, it's not about being perfect tomorrow.
And what you see for the people that are good, especially the three other than me, is you don't see the years and years and years to get them there. Mm-hmm. And even with myself, just to start TrainerRoad, I did so much programming. Oh man, it was like, I'd wake up at like 5 a.m. and I would literally go till like 10 or 11 at night every day for years, like at work and then at home, to try to improve my skills. And, you know, people don't see that sort of stuff. Kobe, like, known for his hard work effort through his whole life. LeBron James too, Michael Jordan, like all these people who are the best. No one just shows up and is good. And John seems to be really good in cycling, but he is, but it's the motocross days, right? And that's the skills all growing up and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's just, don't worry about other people pretty much.
Yeah. Kate Courtney was on our podcast a while back, and she made a really insightful comment, and that was that she views her training as a range of different verticals, which is an interesting way of thinking about it. So there's the vertical of fitness, there's the vertical of skill, there's the vertical of mental toughness, and there's all of these different verticals that she's training at any one time. And, you know, in order to become better as a whole, well-rounded athlete. And each one of those things is interdependent upon, you know, with all of the others. You know, your mental toughness and your confidence is going to affect your skills, and vice versa. So it's interesting to think about it in terms of, you know, different ways of improving as an athlete. And I think that Yeah, it's not a pretty process. And one of the things I want to just mention here, which is something that I've noticed in clinics that I do. So did a gravel clinic last year, and one of the days we did skills, and then the next day we went out and put those skills together on an actual ride. When we did the skills, we were just in a grassy field. We weren't doing some big monster ride. We were literally just working on ratcheting and just working on ratcheting over and over. And that's a really, really quote unquote simple thing to do. But if you don't stop, remove other distraction, and practice it with intention, you're not going to get as good as quickly as you could. And I think a lot of people just have this idea that like, oh, if I just go ride a bunch, I'm going to get better. You will. You absolutely will. But if you start to identify that there are certain things that you struggle with, maybe climbing, maybe cornering, whatever it happens to be, if you take time to focus on that specifically in its own context, you'll really make you'll make progress more quickly, and then you can assimilate those skills together in your next big ride.
Yeah, it's like a note that you have on here too, and I think this is a good one to start or to end on. The most skilled people have the biggest bank of embarrassing and frustrating experiences, and that's the truth, right?
Ooh,
so
I'm pretty skilled.
If that's the metric,
By that logic,
World champ.
that's important to break down that barrier of unattainability that we assign to a person or a skill. You know, it's there were plenty of days where that athlete that we admire and perhaps emulate, you know, they're not exceptional from mistake, right? They still make those mistakes. That happens.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.